The bar's neon glow pulsed like a heartbeat, casting shadows over Lila's face as she swirled her whiskey. Her laughter too loud, too brittle. Ethan's hand brushed hers, a fleeting touch that sent a jolt through her, and she hated herself for it because across the table, Noah, her best friend, was watching. One reckless night, one stupid mistake, was about to unravel everything they'd built. Lila was 25, a graphic designer with a sharp tongue and a heart that felt too much. She'd known Noah since their freshman year at NYU, when they'd bonded over late-night ramen and dreams of conquering the city. Noah, with his quick wit and electric blue eyes, was the kind of person who made you feel seen, like you were the only one in the room. He was gay, fiercely proud, and had been dating Ethan for 2 years, a guy who radiated charm like it was his job, with dark curls and a smile that could melt anyone. Lila loved them both, but in different ways. Noah was her anchor. Ethan was complicated. That night, the three of them had ended up at the Rusty Anchor, a dive bar in Brooklyn where the air smelled of stale beer and regret. It was supposed to be a celebration. Noah had just landed a role in an off-Broadway play, a dream he'd chased for years. The drinks kept coming, shots of tequila burning away the edges of reason. Lila's head spun as Ethan leaned closer, his knee brushing hers under the table. "You're trouble. You know that," he'd whispered, his voice low, teasing. She'd laughed it off, but the heat in her chest told a different story. Noah was in the bathroom when it happened. The bar was loud, the music thumping, and Ethan's hand found Lila's again, this time lingering. "Why do you always look at me like that?" he asked, his eyes locking onto hers. She should have pulled away, should have said something snarky and changed the subject. But the whiskey had dulled her inhibitions, and the truth slipped out, because you make it hard not to. The next few hours were a blur. They stumbled out of the bar, Noah still laughing, oblivious, as they piled into a cab. At Noah's apartment, the night spiraled. More drinks, more reckless laughter, and then Noah passed out on the couch, leaving Lila and Ethan alone in the dim glow of the living room. The air felt heavy, charged with something dangerous. Ethan's hand grazed her cheek, and before she could think, her lips were on his. It was a mistake, born of liquor and longing, but it didn't feel like one in the moment. Their bodies pressed together, urgent and desperate, as if they could outrun the consequences. When it was over, Lila lay awake in Ethan's arms, guilt clawing at her chest. Noah was still asleep on the couch, unaware that his best friend and his boyfriend had just betrayed him. Morning came too fast. Lila slipped out before Noah woke, her head pounding with shame. Ethan texted her later, "We need to talk." She ignored it, hoping silence could bury the truth. But secrets have a way of clawing their way out, and this one was a ticking bomb. Over the next week, Lila avoided Noah's calls, claiming she was swamped with work. She couldn't face him, couldn't look into those blue eyes without seeing her own betrayal reflected back. But Noah was persistent, showing up at her apartment with coffee and a grin. "You're acting weird," he said, tossing a sugar packet at her. "What's going on, Lila?" She forced a smile, her stomach twisting. "Nothing. Just life, you know." But Noah wasn't buying it. He knew her too well, could read the cracks in her facade. And Ethan wasn't helping, kept texting, his messages a mix of guilt and something else, something that scared her. "I can't stop thinking about you," he wrote one night. She deleted it, but the words burned into her mind. The secret was a weight, pressing down on her every moment. She saw it in the way Ethan's gaze lingered too long, in the way Noah's laughter didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. Something was shifting, fracturing, and Lila knew it was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down. Lila's apartment felt too small, the walls closing in as she stared at her phone. Ethan's latest text glowing like a warning. We can't keep pretending it didn't happen. She wanted to scream, to throw her phone across the room. But instead she typed back, "Stop. This ends now." Her hands trembled as she hit send, knowing it wouldn't be that simple. Noah noticed everything. He always had. At their weekly diner meetup, he slid into the booth across from her. His usual energy dimmed. "You're avoiding me," he said, stirring his coffee with a frown. "And don't lie, Lila. I know you." His voice was gentle but firm, and it cut her deeper than she expected. "I'm not avoiding you," she lied, her voice cracking. "Work's just been insane." Noah raised an eyebrow, unconvinced, but he didn't push. Instead, he talked about his play, about Ethan's late nights at the law firm, about how things felt. Off. Lila's heart sank. Did he suspect something? She couldn't tell, but the guilt was eating her alive. That night, Ethan showed up at her door. It was past midnight, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days, dark circles under his eyes. His hair a mess. "We need to tell him," he said, stepping inside without an invitation. "This is killing me, Lila. I love him. But what?" She snapped, her voice low but sharp. "You think I wanted this? You think I'm okay with betraying my best friend?" Her words were venom, but they were aimed at herself as much as him. Ethan paced, running a hand through his curls. "I don't know what I'm feeling," he admitted, his voice raw. "I love Noah. But that night, it wasn't just the alcohol. You know it wasn't." His words hung in the air, heavy and dangerous. Lila's chest tightened. She'd felt it too, the spark, the pull, but admitting it would make it real. And she couldn't afford that. "Get out," she said, pointing to the door. "We're not doing this. Noah deserves better." Ethan hesitated, his eyes searching hers, but he left without another word. Lila sank to the floor, tears burning her eyes. She'd always prided herself on being strong, but this was breaking her. The next day, Noah invited her to a rehearsal for his play. She almost said no, but the thought of letting him down again was worse than facing him. The theater was a small, cramped space in the East Village, filled with the hum of actors and crew. Noah was in his element, commanding the stage with a quiet intensity that made Lila's heart ache. She watched him, wondering how she'd let herself hurt someone so bright, so good. After rehearsal, they grabbed pizza nearby. Noah was quieter than usual, his usual banter replaced by a thoughtful silence. "You'd tell me if something was wrong, right?" he asked suddenly, his eyes locking onto hers. Lila froze, her slice halfway to her mouth. "Of course," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But the lie tasted bitter, and she could feel the cracks in their friendship widening. She wanted to confess, to spill everything and beg for forgiveness. But the words wouldn't come. Not yet. Back at her apartment, she found a voicemail from Ethan. "I'm telling him," he said, his voice shaky. "Tomorrow. I can't keep this from him anymore." Panic surged through her. She called him back, but he didn't answer. She texted, "Don't do this. Please." No response. Lila didn't sleep that night. She lay awake, imagining Noah's face when he learned the truth, his hurt, his anger, his betrayal. She'd lose him, and she'd deserve it. But the thought of Ethan confessing without her, of controlling the narrative, made her blood boil. If anyone was going to tell Noah, it had to be her. She grabbed her coat and headed to Noah's apartment, her heart pounding. The city blurred past her, the lights of Manhattan a dizzying backdrop to her racing thoughts. She had to get there before Ethan did. She had to make this right, or at least try. The streets of Manhattan were alive with noise, But Lila's world was silent except for the thud of her heartbeat. She stood outside Noah's apartment, her breath visible in the chilly night air, her finger hovering over the buzzer. What could she say? I'm sorry I slept with your boyfriend. The truth was a blade, and she was about to cut them all. She pressed the buzzer, her hand shaking. Noah's voice crackled through the intercom. Lila. It's 1 a.m. You okay? His concern only deepened her guilt. She mumbled something about needing to talk and was buzzed in. The elevator ride felt like an eternity, each floor ticking by like a countdown to disaster. Noah opened the door in sweatpants and a faded t-shirt, his hair messy from sleep. What's wrong? He asked, pulling her inside. The apartment smelled like coffee and Ethan's cologne, a reminder of the life she'd disrupted. She couldn't meet his eyes. I messed up. Noah, she started, her voice trembling. I did something awful. His face shifted, confusion giving way to something darker. Before she could continue, the door opened again, and Ethan walked in, his face pale. Lila. Ethan's voice was sharp, surprised. What are you doing here? Noah looked between them, his brows furrowing. The air grew thick, the truth hanging like a storm cloud. Someone tell me what's going on, Noah said, his voice low. Dangerous. Lila's throat tightened. She'd rehearsed this moment 100 times. But now, with Noah's eyes boring into her, she felt like she was drowning. It was one night. She blurted. At the bar. After you passed out. Ethan and I. We slept together. The words spilled out, raw and jagged, and Noah's face crumpled. He staggered back, as if her confession had physically struck him. You what? His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of a scream. Ethan stepped forward, reaching for him, but Noah flinched away. Don't touch me, he snapped, his eyes blazing with hurt. Noah, it was a mistake, Ethan said, his voice breaking. We were drunk. It didn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything. Noah cut him off, turning to Lila. You're my best friend. How could you do this? His voice cracked, and Lila felt her heart shatter. She wanted to explain, to beg, but the pain in his eyes silenced her. I'm so sorry, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I never meant to hurt you. But Noah was already moving, grabbing his jacket and heading for the door. I can't be here, he said, his voice hollow. I need to think. The door slammed behind him, leaving Lila and Ethan in a suffocating silence. Why did you tell him? Ethan hissed, his guilt turning to anger. I was going to do it. I was going to fix this. Fix it. Lila shot back. You were going to make it worse. He deserved to hear it from me. They stood there, glaring at each other, the weight of their choices crushing them both. Lila left the apartment, her legs carrying her to the street where Noah had disappeared. She wandered the city, her phone buzzing with Ethan's calls, but she ignored them. She needed to find Noah, to make him understand if that was even possible. Hours later, she found him sitting on a bench in Washington Square Park, staring at the empty fountain. His face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed. She sat beside him, keeping her distance. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said softly. But I need you to know I hate myself for this. Noah didn't look at her. I trusted you, he said, his voice raw. Both of you. The words cut deeper than any accusation. They sat in silence, the city humming around them, as Lila realized the true cost of one drunken night. The park was quiet, the city's pulse muted under the weight of Noah's silence. Lila sat beside him, her hands clasped tightly to keep them from trembling. She wanted to reach out, to bridge the chasm between them, But the betrayal was a wall too high to climb. I don't even know who you are anymore, Noah said finally, his voice barely audible. You were my family, Lila. You and Ethan. His words were a knife, twisting in her gut. She'd always thought of Noah as her safe place, the one person who'd never judge her. Now, she'd ruined that. I don't have an excuse, she said, her voice thick with tears. I was drunk. I was stupid. But that doesn't make it okay. I'd do anything to take it back. Noah's jaw tightened, and he turned to her, his blue eyes stormy with pain. Do you love him? He asked, the question catching her off guard. Her breath hitched. Did she? The night with Ethan had been a blur of heat and bad decisions. But there was something in his touch, his gaze, that lingered in her mind. She hated herself for it. No, she said, but the word felt like a lie. It was a mistake. Noah. I swear. He shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping him. You're lying to yourself, he said. I saw the way you looked at him tonight. And him at you. He stood, shoving his hands in his pockets. I need space. Lila. From both of you. She watched him walk away, his figure disappearing into the city's glow. Her chest ached, but she didn't follow. He deserved that much. Back at her apartment, she collapsed onto her couch, the silence deafening. Her phone buzzed Ethan again. She didn't answer. She couldn't face him, not when her own feelings were a tangled mess. The next few days were a blur of guilt and avoidance. Lila threw herself into work, sketching designs until her hands cramped. But nothing could drown out the memory of Noah's face. Ethan kept texting, begging to talk, but she ignored him. She didn't trust herself around him, not when her heart was so confused. Then Noah called. His voice was calm, too calm, like the quiet before a storm. Meet me at the diner, he said. We need to talk. Her stomach dropped, but she agreed. The diner was their place, a sanctuary of greasy food and late-night confessions. Now, it felt like a courtroom. Noah was already there, sitting in their usual booth, his hands wrapped around a coffee mug. He looked tired. His usual spark dimmed. I've been thinking, he said as she slid in across from him. About us. About Ethan. About everything. Lila braced herself, expecting anger, but Noah's voice was steady. I don't hate you, he said. I want to, but I don't. You're still my best friend, even after this. His words were a lifeline, but they came with a weight. But I can't trust you right now. And I don't know if I can trust Ethan either. She nodded, tears stinging her eyes. What do we do? She asked, her voice small. I don't know, he admitted. But I'm not ready to lose you. Not completely. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was something. A sliver of hope in the wreckage. As they talked, Lila felt the first flicker of healing. It wouldn't be easy. But maybe, just maybe, they could rebuild something from the ashes of that drunken night. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed softly, casting a harsh glow on Noah's face as he sipped his coffee. Lila clung to his words, I am not ready to lose you like a lifeline. But the distance between them was palpable. They talked for hours, skirting the edges of the betrayal, neither ready to dive into the raw wound. I'm breaking up with Ethan, Noah said suddenly, his voice flat. Lila's heart stopped. She'd expected anger, maybe even a fight, but not this. I can't be with someone I don't trust, he continued, staring at his mug. And I don't know if I ever will again. Lila wanted to argue, to tell him Ethan loved him, but the words stuck in her throat. She was the last person who had the right to defend Ethan. I'm so sorry, she said instead, her voice breaking. Noah's eyes met hers, And for a moment, she saw the boy she'd met at 18, full of dreams and laughter. "I know you are," he said, "but sorry doesn't fix this." He paused, then added, "I need time, Lila. And I need you to figure out what you want. Because I saw the way you look at him. You need to be honest with yourself." His words hit like a punch. She'd been avoiding the truth, burying it under guilt and shame. Did she have feelings for Ethan? The thought made her sick, but it was there, undeniable, like a splinter under her skin. Back at her apartment, Lila's phone lit up with a text from Ethan. "Noah's leaving me." "What did you say to him?" Anger flared in her chest. She called him, her voice shaking. "I didn't make him break up with you," she snapped. "This is on us. Ethan. We did this. We need to talk," he said, his voice desperate. "In person. Please." Against her better judgment, she agreed. An hour later, Ethan was at her door, his eyes wild with panic. "I love him, Lila," he said, pacing her living room. "But I can't stop thinking about you. It's tearing me apart." "Stop," she said, her voice sharp. "You don't get to say that. You don't get to make this about us when Noah's the one hurting." But even as she spoke, her heart betrayed her, racing at his words. She hated herself for it. Ethan stepped closer, his hand reaching for hers. "Tell me you don't feel it too," he said, his voice low. She pulled away, her back against the wall, her mind screaming to run. But her body remembered that night, the heat of his touch, and it terrified her. "I don't," she lied, turning away. "You need to leave." Ethan hesitated, then nodded, his shoulders slumping as he walked out. Lila sank to the floor, tears streaming down her face. She was drowning in her own choices, and she didn't know how to swim to shore. The next day, she met Noah at the theater. He was rehearsing, his performance raw and powerful, channeling his pain into his art. Afterward, they walked through the city, the silence between them less heavy than before. "I'm moving out," Noah said. "I need a fresh start. Somewhere that doesn't remind me of him." Lila's heart ached, but she nodded. "I'll help you," she said. "Whatever you need." It was a small offering, but it was all she had. As they walked, she realized that rebuilding their friendship would take time, but she was willing to fight for it no matter how long it took. Noah's new apartment was a tiny studio in Queens, a blank canvas that smelled of fresh paint and possibility. Lila helped him move, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs, her arms aching but her heart lighter. They didn't talk about Ethan or that night, but the act of building something new together felt like a step toward healing. "Thanks for this," Noah said as they unpacked dishes, his voice soft. "I didn't think I'd want you here, but I'm glad you are." Lila smiled, her chest tight with gratitude. It wasn't forgiveness. Not fully, but it was progress. Back in her own life, Lila tried to focus on work, on rebuilding herself. But Ethan was a ghost she couldn't shake. He stopped texting, but she saw him everywhere in the coffee shop they used to haunt, in the way her phone lit up with notifications she hoped were from him. She hated herself for it, for wanting someone who'd caused so much pain. One night, she ran into him at a gallery opening in Chelsea. He was there with colleagues, his suit sharp but his eyes tired. Their gazes locked across the room, and for a moment, the world fell away. He crossed the room, his expression unreadable. "We can't keep avoiding each other," he said, his voice low. "I'm trying to move on, Lila, but I need to know where we stand." Her heart pounded, torn between guilt and desire. She wanted to hate him, to blame him, but the truth was Messier. "There's no we," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos inside. "You need to let this go." For Noah's sake. Ethan's face fell, but he nodded, stepping back. As he walked away, Lila felt a strange mix of relief and loss. She threw herself into repairing her friendship with Noah. They started small coffee dates, movie nights, moments that reminded her of who they used to be. Noah was healing, his laughter returning, but there was a guardedness in him now, a wall she'd helped build. One evening, as they sat on his new balcony, Noah opened up. "I miss him," he admitted, staring at the city skyline. "But I don't miss the lies. I don't know if I can ever trust like that again." Lila's heart broke, but she listened, letting him pour out his pain. "I'm here," she said, her voice steady. "I know I messed up, but I'm here now. And I'm not going anywhere." Noah looked at her, his eyes softening, and for the first time in weeks, he reached for her hand. They were far from okay, but they were trying. And in the quiet of that moment, Lila felt a spark of hope, a chance to rebuild, to prove that love, even when broken, could find a way to mend. Months passed, and the city shifted with the seasons, leaves falling as Lila and Noah rebuilt their friendship piece by piece. They laughed more, their old rhythm returning, but the scars remained. Lila carried her guilt like a shadow, but she was learning to live with it, to let it fuel her determination to be better. Ethan faded into the background, a memory she tried to bury. She heard he'd taken a job in Chicago, a fresh start away from the wreckage they'd created. Part of her was relieved. Part of her ached at the thought of never seeing him again. She didn't love him not the way Noah had, but the pull was real, and letting it go was its own kind of grief. Noah's play opened to glowing reviews, and Lila was there on opening night, cheering louder than anyone. Watching him on stage, pouring his heart into every line, she saw the strength that had always drawn her to him. After the show, they celebrated at a rooftop bar, the city sparkling below them. "You're killing it," she told him, clinking her glass against his. Noah grinned, but there was a weight in his eyes. "I couldn't have done this without you," he said. "Even after everything." His honesty caught her off guard, and she felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't deserve that," she said, but Noah shook his head. "You're human, Lila. We all mess up. What matters is you're here now." His words were a gift, one she didn't feel worthy of, but she held onto them tightly. As winter settled over the city, Lila started to heal. She took up painting again, something she'd abandoned after college, pouring her emotions onto the canvas. She and Noah spent more time together, their bond stronger for having been tested. They talked about the future, his dreams of Broadway, her hopes of opening her own design studio. For the first time in months, the future felt possible, but the past wasn't done with them. One snowy evening, Lila found a letter in her mailbox, Ethan's handwriting unmistakable. Her hands shook as she opened it. "I'm sorry for everything," he wrote. "I loved Noah, and I think I could have loved you too. I hope you both find peace." There was no return address, no way to respond. She burned the letter in her sink, watching the flames consume the last piece of that night. She didn't tell Noah about the letter. Some things were better left buried. Instead, she focused on the present, on the friendship they were rebuilding, on the person she wanted to become. The guilt would always be there, but it didn't have to define her. Spring bloomed in New York, the city waking up with color and possibility. Lila and Noah stood on the High Line, watching the sunset paint the skyline gold. They'd come a long way from that drunken night, their friendship forged anew in the fire of honesty and time. "I forgive you," Noah said suddenly, his voice steady as he leaned against the railing. Lila's breath caught, her eyes searching his. "It doesn't mean it didn't hurt," he continued, "but I can't hold on to it forever. You're my family, Lila." Tears spilled down her cheeks, and she pulled him into a hug, the kind that said everything words couldn't. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Noah hugged her back, and for the first time in a year, she felt whole. They'd both changed. Noah was stronger, his heart bruised but open, ready to love again when the time came. Lila had learned to face herself, to own her mistakes and grow from them. The night with Ethan had been a mistake, but it had taught her the value of honesty, of loyalty, of fighting for the people who matter. As they walked down the High Line, Noah's arm around her shoulders, Lila thought about the journey they'd taken. One drunken night had nearly destroyed them, but it had also shown them what they were capable of: forgiveness, resilience, love in its truest form. The secret had threatened to tear them apart, but in the end, it had made them stronger. They stopped at a cafe, the same one where they'd spent countless nights dreaming of their futures. Over coffee, Noah talked about a new play, a new love interest, a new chapter. Lila listened, her heart full, knowing she'd be there for every step. The city hummed around them, a reminder that life moves on, that mistakes don't define you unless you let them. Lila looked at Noah, his smile bright against the twilight, and felt a quiet peace settle over her. They'd survived the storm, and together, they'd found their way back to the light.